Hello and welcome to Dateline New Haven. I'm your host, Paul Bass, inviting you to look behind the headlines on the stories that make the Elm City tick. Nothing ticks better than Pundit Friday, about to begin here in the WNHH studio with the #1 pundits in the media universe. Pundits like the dairy-free goddess of our grassroots radio operation, the belle of our ball, and I mean that, like deep in my heart. She is the fun. The managing editor of the Inner City News and the host of WNHH's Love Babs program, Babs Rawls Ivy. And the flyest news hunter-gatherer this side of Fleet Street. You think people know what Fleet Street is?
Yeah.
All right.
Do they know?
Because I love the whole idea that the Fleet Street icon was male British with a very fancy hat chasing like the political and crime scoops. We kind of update that just like pundits. Anyway, she is the flyest news hunter-gatherer this side of Fleet Street, Star New Haven independent reporter Markeisha Ricks.
Friday.
At the controls and soon to be on screen. Station manager and heavy D Donald Trump devotee Harry Drost, the man who keeps us on the air and is also the bravest man in New Haven.
Yay.
Did I miss anybody? Did I forget anybody?
Where's Norma?
Did I leave out anybody? Norma, we hope is on her way in. Is anybody else in the studio? Anyone who just in a Claire's coma?
Hard side back.
Oh, I know who else we forgot. The preordained pastor and prophet of paradise, our DJ
God.
Deliverance.
Preordained
The filial
pastor?
force of fortuitous fomentation.
Yeah.
The ouster of obstinance and ostentation, the savior of civility, the hurricane of heavenly homilies, the conqueror of cannabis commerce,
Oh my
the
God.
bright light in the
Jesus.
New Haven light, the straight
Yeah.
shooter from Bermuda,
Uh-huh.
the mystical and metaphorical man
Paul
on the
could preach
money,
a sermon. He could.
Yeah.
the just-in-time judge of
Yeah.
jackals and japery,
Ooh,
Yes.
He's like, let's make it dramatic.
the sentinel of serenity, sincerity, and salvation,
Uh-huh.
the poobah
Yeah.
of unparalleled political
are all
passion and
new, Paul. Wait a
perspicacity,
Uh-huh.
the conquistador of cussing criminals, the weaver of wellness and wisdom, the mellifluous and meritocratic miner of melody, the plow driver of peace, the driver out of demons,
You know, we
discord,
only
and
have
dissonance,
40 minutes.
the liberated lion of lucidity, the erudite earl of ergonomics,
Yeah.
the maniacal monarch of mercy, and the blistering barbecuer of brain-dead bozos, our prize protector against pusillanimity,
Yeah.
the bodhisattva of battle rap,
Uh-huh.
the missionary of modesty, mesmerizer of the masses, shaman of the shoreline, potentate of 360 state.
Yeah.
He is the maximum mixologist Joe Ugly of the Joe Ugly Show in the morning. Welcome, sir.
You know what? This is
Thank you,
too
sir.
much bromance.
I'll
It's
admit
too
it.
much.
I'll admit it. I'm a Joe Ugly fan,
I thank you, sir.
and I'm glad you're all here for
I'm a Paul
Pundit
Bass
Friday.
fan.
So now, do we get in trouble if we do some gambling on air, or what if the prize is just pride if we don't get money out of the
What are
deal?
we gambling? I like money though.
I like money too.
Because you know what the fun thing about
Christmas is coming.
making predictions as pundits
Mhm.
is that we don't really know any better than anybody else. Right? And
Like
most
the
of the time,
sauce is
Don't
out, y'all.
spoil it,
well, let's not
Paul.
tell the
Just
readers. This
giving
is
them
between
the
us. I
secret.
hope people at home just turn down your radio for a second. We go through this. So, like, we don't know any better than anybody else. We always act like we do. We make our prediction 9 times out of 10 it's wrong. But 1 times out of 10 it's right, and that's the one we always remember and continue to feel. Maybe I'm just speaking for myself. The smartest people on the block. In that spirit, I challenge you folks to some punditry, prediction, gambling.
Okay.
Okay.
We got a little pool going here.
Yeah.
Pool of what?
Tony Harper's been mayor 5 years.
Yes.
Uh-oh.
That whole time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of a good run for a job like this. She's had one person in charge of economic development.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look over at Babs, you remember all this, and Joe, people who really made their mark on the city in that job,
Yeah.
they didn't last
Henry-
longer. John Sawyer,
Henry Fernandez.
Will Ginsburg.
Yeah.
I could be wrong, but I don't believe anyone else went over 5 years or much more, and sometimes less.
I think you're right.
And in that time, you can have a big impact. Henry Fernandez is why we have Gateway Community College downtown, why we
And
built up all this
IKEA.
IKEA and all these LCI neighborhood housing.
And all these damn one-way streets.
John
Ooh.
Sawyer's how we got the
Don't get me
downtown
started.
entertainment district.
Mhm.
Will Ginsburg's why we got the Ninth Square.
Mm-hmm.
So Matthew Nemerson is leaving, and you know he's leaving. He was kind of run out. He had enemies within the administration. He had a lot of fights with people outside it. He was brash. He had a strong idea what to do. He'd push the limit. And every other day, Tony Harp had to listen to someone who had power
Whine and
influence. Telling him.
cry.
But you know, Matt did a good 5 years. and I don't know. I don't think any of us agrees with everything because he's someone who has a strong point of view, but he really oversaw a pretty broad remaking of our city from all this downtown apartment boom that was happening, and they guided it, in my opinion, well. They kept a nice square affordable housing. They got a lot of market rate housing on the rolls, some of it with affordable housing in. They got 11.4 acres in the Hill, where since 1986, no city administration could get built on. He found a really smart way, which is like we don't have to make it all cookie cutter with straight streets, and we don't have to go through these years-long expensive process of trying to redo utilities and streets. All of a sudden, boom, he got the right person in, and they're building it. He got the Coliseum Music Hall. It was dark under all these years, under a very strong, effective mayor, John DeStefano. Couldn't crack that. Yale had the property landlocked, the old Palace Theater, and Matt came in with a crew and figured a way around it, and before you blinked an eye, got it rebuilt to the Coliseum Music Hall. So Matt accomplished a lot. Got a lot of fights.
They're very busy.
He's gone now. Question is, who's coming next, and what does it mean?
Ooh.
So here's what I'm wagering. I think the
It's
options.
me.
Okay, so we got some scoops here. That's real side.
Is that
Damn.
true?
But if you do, maybe you can get that apartment at the top of the Lexington
I know.
building you've been wanting, the penthouse.
You talk about
Yeah.
corruption. Let me
It's
tell
like now
you.
you all have to
You're
leave.
ready for the corruption. Okay, so I want to have some wages here because none of us knows. That's just no. There's no inside information. No one's been whispering in our ears about who's going to get picked. Right now, Mike Piscatello is the acting development administrator.
How many jobs does Mike Piscatelli have?
He's going to be acting sanitation chief.
He's Jamaican?
He's going to be the
What's
acting
happening?
ticket taker at the Coliseum Music Hall. Now,
I
none
think
of us
he worked.
permanent.
I feel like he's like outside of the like he's outside of a parking lot taking tickets too.
He
like,
is.
I feel like he's so.
and he's going to be
busy.
the acting pilot on Air
Shit.
Force One until they get someone for Donald
Like
Trump.
my God.
And in addition to that, he's the acting city plan director, city plan commission, and he was previously the
It's
number
so
2
many
in economic
jobs.
development. So obviously, when Matthew's leaving as of today, Matthew Nemerson, it made sense in the short term to have someone there who knows the job, doing the job, and does it well.
And who's also very calm.
Mhm.
Mike Piscatelli is a very calm man.
So you got 2 people in the city government now who could step into that job and have been very successful working on big pieces of the job. One of them is Mike Piscatelli. The other is Serena Neal Sangiorgio, who grew up here in Dixwell, did a lot of really strong economic development work in New Orleans and Baltimore. So got her cred, got her experience, came back to New Haven, and is now doing work like she overseen the Church Street South transition. She put together a lot of that Hill project. So Liberal City Initiative, which she runs as part under development, does a lot of development. So either of them is very qualified to do the job. They bring very different styles. And there are a lot of pros and cons for each of them that don't have to do with them personally. For instance, one commenter wrote in, Mike Piscatelli does a really great job. He's now running city plan and economic development. And this one commenter, Kevin McCarthy, really follows government. He says city
purposes.
plan is supposed to regulate what development happens in the city. Economic development administration is supposed to promote it. So his feeling is that if you're going to pick Piscatelli for a job, don't have him do both anymore. I'm not sure I agree with Kevin, but he knows a lot more than I do about that issue.
Okay.
Then another argument is city government for a long time has needed to be restructured. From time to time, you have to look at how departments work. So LCI, Liberal City Initiative, have 2 very different things. It does code enforcement.
And development.
And it gets development going in neighborhoods. And some neighborhood development, like in the Hill, that's big development. It's as big as anything else, right?
Yeah.
So one argument has been that LCI structurally should be broken in half. And this wasn't my idea originally, by the way. This was in the Harp administration. I think Tony Harp says she's even thought about this. Put the enforcement functions under the building department. Keep LCI development under development
Under
itself.
development.
And then you just move Serena Neal Sangiorgio up top to run that.
Huh.
Because she has like Mike Piscatelli, she has lots of experience dealing directly with developers, directly with community people who have concerns about development. She's lived it. So that would be part of restructuring that way. And in the other case, it's part of how do you think? Because also we have a budget crisis in our city in a sense that we don't always need as many
Is that
top
why
positions.
Mike Piscatelli has all these jobs?
No, it's
we don't
because
wanna-
it could be. It could be. And also it could be that it takes
Mike, you gotta
time.
wear many hats.
They don't move fast. Like there are different styles of government. One is deliberative, like take a year to find a new police chief and have a lot of committees and get the person you thought you're going to get anyway, but have a lot of input. Or get a fire chief.
I saw that shade.
But
Yeah,
here it
big
is
time.
without shade, okay? And I always talk about this, Tony Harp. I feel she's right and I'm wrong. She's very deliberative. Take your time, get a lot of people at the table. I'm like, have them vote for you every 2 years. Talk to people all the time, but then just move. And I think I'm wrong, and she's right, by the way. So look at the fire chief. She got a good fire chief by taking a long time to have this process, right? So in this case, it was known that Matthew Nemerson was going to leave. Would you want to just bring somebody right in? And do you want to go on the inside? You got all these projects happening in town. Do you want to bring someone who's been working on them, either Mike Piscatello or Neil San Giorgio, and bring them right in? Or do you want to make some hunt nationally for a while to get someone who knows a lot of development and bring them in? And do you want to cut those positions? Because when you rethink about government all the time, one thing you do is look at whether you have too much bureaucracy or too many different positions. Do you fold, like I was telling about that idea Tony Harp told us she was looking at one point, about dividing LCI in half and folding the other two departments. Then you don't need as many top-heavy people when you're dealing with structural deficits. So I've talked a long time. What's your prediction? Who's going to get it and why?
Mike Piscitelli.
And why is that?
Because you always bet on white. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. No,
Oh my
no,
God.
I didn't mean that. I kind of mean it, but
Tony Harp is African American, by the way. She makes the decision.
I know what she is. She's
She
my
hires a
sorority
lot of
sister,
people of
too.
color.
I know she does. She does.
Uh,
I mean, I think you laid out a good case.
For
I think
either one of them, actually.
For either one of them, I just think whatever the style. I think style will win over anything.
That's what I was thinking.
Style will win over anything. So depending
Very
on
different style. Serena's is more, she isn't like Matthews in the sense that Nemerson's, that she does get along very well with the developers and the political people.
Yeah.
She's very private opposed to public person, so she won't talk to the media a lot. She's got a lot of thinking going on from a lifetime of development.
yeah.
And she will not.
And also from just being from here.
But
Yeah, but
so
she's
when you
from
do
here,
talk
so.
to her, you find out fascinating ideas, but she doesn't go for the limelight. But behind the limelight, she's tough.
She's
Yeah.
tough.
She's a tough
She has a
woman.
reputation for
She
being
lets you
tough.
know if you're full of it, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Michael Piscatelli will be more kind of genteel, very nice man as well, and they're both very nice people. You won't find out that he thinks you're full of it until someone else tells you what he was saying when you
Yeah.
left the office.
I
know
mean,
how
if
important
I
that is.
you know,
Because I've had experience on both ends of both of
Listen,
them.
I say let black women run the world. So there you go.
All right. So, and Joe, why do you think it's going to be Piscatelli?
I just read because the guy is all over the place. I mean, you
Like
know,
he is the go-to guy.
He's
for
like
like
the
if,
go-to,
if
yeah.
a department needs like
It's like, hey, can I get-
leadership, he's the dude that they choose that they ask to do more than one job.
I've
Which
watched
one-
him
I
since traffic and parking when he ran that. He did a great job of traffic and
Does
parking.
he want this job?
I have no
See,
idea.
That's the
No.
thing.
That's the
Would
other
you
thing.
want all these jobs?
No.
He's
When he was in
like,
traffic
look.
and parking, I watched how he took people who are difficult to deal with but had good points from the grassroots about transportation ideas and really listened to them
But he has
seriously and made decisions with their input.
The thing about Mike Piscitelli is that the question is, as we're sitting around here saying that, he did different departments. Is he a good go-to guy, or is he a guy for one department? That's the real question.
That's again. That's why when you guys said it comes down to style, I actually believe it might come down to structure. Do we want to go the LCI route, divide it in half, and restructure government that way, and get the woman who's worked directly on these projects? And she is
I
very
really
good at
like
making
the
things
idea
happen.
of restructuring it
Neil
that way.
San Giorgio
and
really
letting
makes things
Serena
happen.
lead
Well,
that
I
way.
Or
just-
do we want to go and thinking of merging city plan and economic development? Maybe Kevin McCarthy has a view that not everyone agrees with, and that might be a way you can bifurcate that job and have Mike Piscatelli, who's very good on how
So I
government works.
see it two ways. So if the city were to go the restructuring route in terms of restructuring LCI and splitting them up and splitting the responsibilities up, I would see that being a good fit under Serena's leadership. On the other hand, if I could also see on the other side of like some combination, instead of, to Kevin's point, I actually don't mind them working together if under Mike's leadership. Now here's the thing, none of those people will ever lead forever.
Right.
So you change the structure and then you change the leadership.
That's
and
a
you're
good
like,
point.
That the person who's leading it now thinks neither of those things work.
That's a good
Right.
point.
But because Mike has had a hand in both the development world as well as the regulation world, because I think he's an urban planner by trade, like I think he can see the big picture. And so he can see not only the big, because I think about this in terms of Longworth and under Matthew's leadership, that everybody's been involved in that.
And Piscatelli's been
rethinking
involved in that.
He has, exactly. And Serena's been involved. Like everybody who's involved in that world in the city government is involved in shaping, along with the citizens of the city, like what could happen at Longworth. So they all have a piece of it. And so, I think any one of those people would be a fine choice in the sense that they have the long-term view. I think Mike having that understanding of where the regulation actually needs to go, not just so something can be developed.
So you're saying city
but
planning could be a good part of
it
economic
could be
development?
a good part. Like I think our city so far
point.
has done a good job of those two arms working together. They don't work actually, in my mind, at cross purposes. They actually kind of collaborate and saying we need to modernize our regulation, not just so some developer can come in and develop whatever they think is cute today, but like for the long term, they all of them I give them all credit because I think they all have been trying to focus on
And you
the
do
long
legally
term.
have a city plan commission that does that job of regulating to whom
Absolutely.
the city plan director reports. And they can still do that job under your view. I guess my big concern is that, we dump on government officials a lot, but most of them, almost all of them, have such great motives and they work so hard in the
do.
public interest. And when you have two talented people like Mike Piscatelli and Serena,
Like, I think it's
Neil
amazing that we have
Sangiorgio,
such
and they're
wealth
develop-
of talent.
I hope that they both come
Nice.
out of this in a way where they feel like, and this is a trick for running government, that they both
Yeah.
won.
Appreciated.
They're both appreciated. Nobody got something at the expense of the other, and they're
Yeah.
going to still be a team.
But here's
Because
what
we
I-
don't want to, and it's not good for the press because neither of them are like press hot dogs, and they don't really tell us what's going on, or even
Which is
like,
refreshing.
yeah. As long as they're not hiding, which they don't hide.
They don't hide. Like,
right.
that's the thing. They
But-
don't hide.
Yeah.
But they're not like fun for reporters to
They're not.
cover. But
They really
but
don't
they do their
enjoy
job.
hot dogging.
But they do their job very well. And, well, I actually think it's legitimate for some people in government to want to explain to the public what they're doing, so
Yes,
you
I
understand.
believe.
And they don't
I
go out of their
agree.
way to do that, but they're responsive when they're asked.
But
But that's
let's
not the
have,
important thing. It's less important than what they're like for the press is what they're like in the job. And they've both done very well, and I'd hate to see us.
Let's have a litmus test.
What's the litmus test?
If you're gonna bring another dollar store into the town, you're out.
What?
Dollar store.
What?
No. But this is you
Where's
have to think
Joe
about
coming
where
from on
retail
that one?
goes.
No.
Because
I don't wanna see
retail
another
these
one.
days is either dollar stores or high end stores.
But some dollar
No,
stores
that's what
aren't
it is.
all
You know what's really
junky. Some
interesting
of them
though?
are very nice, like the one downtown.
Yeah, one of them. But
Right. And one on Whaley's a dump, yeah.
what I would like
But that's
to see,
where you need strong enforcement. That's where you need a city government that is actively enforcing
right.
the rules and making sure if you're gonna bring a dollar store to it better be the best
Best dollar
doggone
store,
dollar
right.
store ever.
Oh,
As if
you
not,
know-
we're gonna be in you, finding you, and dragging you into court every
Yeah,
chance we get
every
until you
chance we
decide
get.
it's time to leave.
I think we should do that. But here's the question: are they both owned by the same company? Are the parent company different, or are they different?
I think the two Whaley ones are. The upper Whaley and lower Whaley.
but they're not owned by the same ones that own the Family Dollar that's in Westville now.
Oh,
I haven't
okay.
been. I haven't been to the one in Westville.
It's really nice.
In the news, the one that was CVS.
Yeah.
That's
So let's get
different.
back to the. Let's get back to.
I'm looking
Okay.
at I'm looking at this. When you look at economic development in downtown New Haven or such, if you have one set of stores, it pretty much gives the brand for the city. It really does. And I would like to see a mix. They have those micro Targets, the micro Whole Foods. I want to see more of those kind of stores come into town. Why not?
It would be interesting to hear from whoever gets to be in that position, whether they break up the departments in different ways or what have you. Like, what is their vision for what's possible for New Haven in terms, and what are the types of business? Because literally, like, not even just, in terms of that, we have all these like new
Right.
urbanist kinds of buildings that have empty storefronts.
Right.
And is the next person going to say we actually need to get away from like housing
And
is
that
where
was a
it's
big
at, and we
thing.
need to
Nathan
get away
Emerson
from
was
it.
really pushing that image of
Yeah.
everything had a store in the front, a few apartments above it, and very dense. And I'm with you, Marquisha. I'm sometimes a believer in letting the market dictate because that's a symbol of the very legitimate critique that new urbanists bring to the old urbanism of the 60s, which is we got rid of those storefronts on the bottom and the apartments above, and that had mixed use and neighborhood life. But even Jane Jacobs herself, who came up with that point, said that doesn't mean that you completely draw that same picture every time 50 years later. It means you
Exactly.
remember that concept of mixed use and organic development from many actors.
I can
rather
go
than
for
I
mixed
really-
use for many things, but
Exactly, and that like you might change the idea of like what does mixed use look like.
Right.
What you need is
right.
a regulations that undergird our ability to transform as a city instead of just going down one path as
Correct.
if nothing else in the world is happening.
Once we get that cookie cutter mentality, it just does not work.
And it's so
there's no
funny about that is
long-term-
that's a cookie cutter mentality that sees itself as being against cookie cutter.
Exactly.
But then it came up with its
And
own
so
cookie cut.
you need other people innovating about space. Like I think about even downtown, some of the buildings like have been like transformed into co-working space because people don't really work in offices the way that they used
Yeah.
to.
Right.
And that may not be coming back.
Right.
So like what is it that like looking at what people actually need, like what they need in terms of housing, everybody can't live in a one bed. I can be perfectly happy in a 1-bedroom studio because I like small spaces and I'm
But
a
not
minimalist.
everyone
But that's
wants
not
it.
everybody's
Right.
story. Babs
Right.
is not going to live in a studio apartment.
No, Babs' penthouse at Alexion. I'm just getting the whole floor.
And barring that,
Yes.
she needs like 2,000 or 3,000 square feet.
No,
Easy.
These
Like,
micro,
that's her ministry.
Yeah,
It's
not
that's
my
another
ministry.
thing. The micro apartment things in the city, and I'm talking about the downtown area of the city. These micro apartments, after a while, it's like, come on, Where are the families?
And
no
to
one
your
is
other
encouraging
point about
families to
that-
move downtown.
But
Are
the
you
city
kidding
makes
me?
more money when they're micro
To
downtown
Joe's
without
other
kids.
point about that, I think another thing that we are doing that kind of drives me a little crazy is we're creating opportunities for people to rent. We're
Right.
not creating opportunities where somebody can own an apartment
you.
downtown.
Thank you.
Like there are apartments that
But
you can
you know
own
what?
downtown. I think they're in
But you know
University
what, Mark
Towers,
Keisha,
but there's
though?
nobody here to buy.
You know why? Everyone who wanted to build those could get no financing.
that's
Right
a
or
shame.
wrong, they say the market doesn't exist and people aren't going to buy, they're going to rent.
How do they know the market don't exist if they don't even
Because Joe,
check?
you were in lending.
Yeah.
Banks do a lot of research on what's selling and what's not
No,
selling and
not
where
all
they've
the
lost
time.
money.
Not all
But
the
sometimes
time.
they make a guess.
But I think
Yeah.
we don't talk about enough about what's driving those conversations.
Right.
That there are people like what's actually driving the conversation about whether that's where the market. If we talk about the fact that people don't pay what they used to pay, that people don't have the job stability to actually own a home, then okay, yeah,
I
we
think
can
it's
have that
opposite.
conversation.
I think it's where the market goes when it's not coming back.
No,
People
no,
are more
no.
mobile. They're not looking to own. They have a wife's or husband's working in New York, the other right here or Hartford. They want some place for a few years and have be nice. They're not.
But
for
you buy
whatever
for a
reason,
few
people
years.
aren't looking
We
to
could do
know-
it.
They're not looking
But
to
you just
own.
raised a good point when you're talking about how banks would not let. No, banks create community.
The conditions,
They're the ones who create the
But
conditions.
they're in the
'cause they could
business
say,
of staying in business. They're not going to go too far ahead of where people want to go.
No,
I mean, you know what?
But
I
what do you
think-
think bring back gentrification? What do you think push gentrification?
Yeah, but they're
And
they
what,
think they can
what
make money
happens
on it.
when that
Yeah.
tide changes?
Right.
Because what we do know
No.
for sure is that the tide comes in and it goes,
Goes
out. Like
out.
it changes.
Babs,
I
you
mean-
had something to say on that.
I mean, I kind of like the idea of somebody being able to own an apartment, and then
I would love
Like
that.
people in New York own apartments.
they're
Right.
all the time, and you could rent them out or sublet them or whatever,
That was the
whatever
Kelly
you want
house.
to do.
Yeah, that's what they do at the Kelly house.
I mean,
That's a nice
I
way.
would. I mean, I think we can handle some of that.
Right.
I'm not suggesting every apartment ought to be
No.
that.
Thank you.
But there ought to
But-
be some apartments
But
that
that's
are
one
built specifically with families in
Condos.
mind and
there
Can
are-
please
viability.
repeat that, please.
Families and
Thank
viability.
you.
But
And
wait a
even
second,
not
families
like
do
I'm
better in
someone
neighborhoods
who
than
doesn't
downtown.
want to own a house per se, but if an apartment were within my reach, I probably would buy that because I see myself as a city dweller,
Right.
and I think that I would like to be a city dweller long term. But there's no option for me to buy an apartment here.
And I'm at, listen, I'm at this age bracket, right? Because my kids are damn near out the door
Yep.
grown. I'm 55. I don't want to live in a big house in my neighborhood now, right?
Right.
I want to be downtown.
And you don't want to rent the rest of your life.
Are you,
you
are you
know.
going to have a roommate on the Alexion penthouse?
No.
Okay.
No roommates.
You can visit.
She
Paul.
won't let me live with
Well, in
her.
terms of Matt Nemerson, I do think I agreed with what Mario Leary wrote in the New Haven Register today. I think his biggest victory, I named some other things, but I think she was right, was district. So there he had a
Yep.
big old abandoned bus depot. And he wasn't the only one. He assembled a committee that really worked on it and cared, people like State Rep Roland Lamar. And they had an offer from an out-of-town developer who wanted to put a big supermarket there, right? But off I-91
Oh, that
on
would have been
State.
so terrible.
And it wouldn't have been the end of the world, but it was this guy who hadn't had a good track record in how he dealt with us, dealt with cities like, you give me what I want or I'm out of here. But he had a lot of money and a track record. They gambled on two New Haven entrepreneurs who were successful in tech, one of them, David Salinas, his business was growing. So they had enough of a track record to gamble on him. But unlike this other guy, didn't have the same access to all that kind of money and all that kind of decades of development.
And he was trying to do something
But
that
they were
nobody else
home
had
ground
done.
and they fit into a vision of the jobs we saw for the future at every level of tech and the kind of building community with the they have a whole tech hub there now. That thing is a big success, as Marquise has written. Filled up
I'm telling
fast.
you, it
So I give
looks
Nemerson-
like a success.
So
I
as
don't know
much
what's
as
going on
as
in
much
there,
as I
but
disagree,
Should
with
go
that-
for a tour.
as much as I
I would
disagree
love
with
to.
Nemerson on some philosophical issues, he really had some successes there. But anyway, so get back to the gamble. So who's going to get that? But the third option is, are they going to
We've
take someone
left
from
the gamble.
outside?
We're beyond the gamble.
But is it going to be Piscatelli? Is it going to be Neil
God, who
San Giorgio?
knows?
Is it going to be someone from out of town, outside government?
I don't know.
You don't want to be
Well,
smart.
right now the city is doing a lot of outside.
You don't want to talk about what you don't know?
Outside.
I don't know. No, I
norm.
don't.
But you're right. I don't know.
All right, we're all just a bunch of wusses. We can't
We're
gamble.
actually pundits who don't actually want to speculate.
Punditize.
We think we don't know, and we should wait to see what happens.
And we are the Friday Pundits on WHHFM 103.5 FM, live streamed at newhavenindependent.org on your home for community radio, running down the news stories of the week. So the news story, the week is going to end with a news story with which it's also going to begin next week.
Uh-oh.
And that's the continuing battle over a civilian review board for the police department.
Oh, my God.
Very
I'm so
quick
tired of
summary.
this.
4 years ago, there was 5 years ago, there was a referendum pushed by the new majority of the Board of Alders saying, we want a civilian review board with teeth, because we had one, but it can't subpoena people. It can't really hold cops accountable for misconduct from the citizens. So that passed. But then for 5 years, they haven't created one because it turned out they didn't want to follow through on their one fundamental goal, which was to give it teeth. Someone talked them out of believing that it can't have subpoena power, even though the city's own corporation council says it can legally, and other people in their workarounds. So now, for the second time, the alders are about to vote on a proposal to create a new version, which in some minor ways might not look like the old one, but in no way changes what the old one was.
Oh my God!
And there's an outcry to stop it. There's an anti-brutality activists are talking this afternoon, and what's interesting is the police chief and assistant chief agreed with the police critics and said, if you're going to do it, the community's got to trust that it needs subpoena power. Justin Elliker, who's obviously eyeing a mayoral run, he wrote a piece in the Independent this week taking the side of the protesters. What do you think should happen? What do you think is going to happen? And how do you think the people are going about it, Markeisha, and raising their issue? Are they doing it effectively?
That's such a leading question because you know how I feel about it. So I noticed I've observed an interesting gap in advocacy, if you will. And so when you think about, can you read my study box alone? There's an interesting a gap in advocacy, and what I mean by that is that so you've had these people kind of intensely going to the Board of Alders, going through all this hearing, stating their case about what they need, why they need it, yada yada yada. Then you get to the last committee meeting of the Board of Alders where they basically kind of staring in their face and listening to them very perfunctorily and saying, all right, and I peep game. So an alder asked a young man from Yale, he was like, where do you live at? Where are you from? And he was like, I live downtown or blah, blah, blah. I'm a Yale student. He was like, oh, which says to me, he's like, oh, you're not in my ward. That doesn't, you can talk, you don't live here. It's basically what that alder was saying. But most of the
activists are not from Yale. There are definitely some.
They're definitely not, but there also is a core group of activists who are in. Yeah. Activism is what they do. That's what they're known for. That's what they do. Yeah. And again, you still are giving the alders room to say, and Babs, you were an alder. Mm-hmm. Would it make a difference?
And a police commissioner.
Yeah, sure.
Would it make a difference to you if there were people consistently calling you saying, before the vote, I believe in this issue, I care about it, this is what I think about it. Like, you might still vote no, but are you hearing from people? Because I feel like from what I'm getting from alders is they're not hearing from people. They hear from this specific group of people.
I don't think they hear from people.
But they're not hearing from people. Nobody's
You would have heard from Emma Jones.
Nobody's in, and that's one alder though. How many votes are on the Board of Alder? Like, that was a group of committee. Had those committee members heard specifically from the people in their ward saying, I want this issue, it's important to me. If you vote against this issue, if you don't give me a civilian review board that is strong, that has subpoena power, I will make it my business to A, you won't get my vote, and B, I'm going to actually either run against you or get somebody to run against you or support whoever runs against you.
So, Markeisha, what I find raised by that point you're making, which I think is an excellent point, is on any issue, how we decide who is the public. Because usually on most issues, except for taxes, where people mindlessly just hate any tax increase while bringing up important points about it, on issues like this that matter, usually 90% of the public's not paying attention. Usually an alder is not going to win or lose election based on what he or she does on an issue. So you hear from the people who care the most, and it might be affected the most, might not. And they speak up, and they have intelligent things to say. How do you weigh that in deciding whom do I have to listen to and what am I motivated to do?
That's a tricky question with this board because who controls this board? Like, what are their interests in this issue? Because if they have no interest in this issue, it's a dead issue.
I wish they would explain to us what they think because they were the ones who made this happen in the first place. They got elected on agenda saying we're going to make sure we have a civilian review board. I still keep going back to why don't we just go to the police commission where everyone agrees there's subpoena power and just create a civilian review board out of that.
The Board of Police Commissioners is a civilian review board.
Yeah.
These people do not work for the police department. Civilian means...
But they are not independent either. They should be, but they're not. They might have been in your day. I'm sure you were.
I mean, I don't, listen, I think, if people really want a civilian review board, give it to them. Because I already know how it's going to go. People are not going, the time and commitment to serve will be overwhelming.
Right, that's always overlooked.
I'm telling you. And
it's hard work.
They just,
and I think
because you want to see it for the sake of seeing it. Get it, please.
But I think that on the flip side of that too, are people who want this so badly prepared for things not to go their way? What do I mean?
And that's
the
yes.
review board has to be independent. That
Yes.
means it can't be weighted down by the people
Yeah.
who even wanted it so
So
badly.
the minute they say we don't see any instance of
or they
police
decide
brutality,
with the police officers, people gonna be mad.
they're gonna
You know
be
what I
mad,
loved
and then
watching-
we'll be back at square one.
loved
Oh, then we
watching-
must disband them and get another.
But isn't this the same thing that was going on when you were police commissioner? Did they have teeth in the commission where you could subpoena people?
No,
Okay.
we've always had police.
Yeah.
We always had subpoena
In
powers.
1977, it was the police commission that uncovered the wiretap scandal.
Oh, that's correct. That's correct.
But since I think that's the last instance of ever hearing.
But the
about
Board
it.
of Aldermen has police. I mean, the Board of Aldermen
Has
have
subpoena
subpoena powers
Right.
too. So they could effectively
That was when
create an
proposal
ad
passed.
hoc
Proposed.
or
committee
lend a member who can use it, like Taisha
yes,
Walker.
they can.
You know what you're saying about people being heard? I agree with you that it's unclear how it'll happen with that. You know, Bill Saunders is a very outspoken critic of police misconduct. He's an artist in town. He got arrested in a questionable case in a concert. And years later, he got to court to sue the cop, and the cop won. And he felt that he had really been heard. He praised the judge and he praised the process. And a lot of times people do. So I don't know how to predict it back. So sometimes people do feel if they believe a process, and that's why I think Anthony
It
Campbell,
does
the
matter if
chief,
they believe in the
and
process.
Tony Reyes said, let's listen to what people are asking for a subpoena power, whether or not we would have designed that way. Because when people believe they're heard and they believe it's fair, they'll often accept the results more. So I think that's what's dangerous. For instance, Donald Trump saying, if I were going to lose this election, it's not going to be fair.
I hear what you're saying,
so
Paul.
that people won't have
but
the
I
result.
don't think with
I'm not
this
disagreeing with you.
I don't think with this civilian review board, I think once they get a decision that they are not happy with, that they will be calling for the heads of those people that are serving. Because
Right.
it's inevitable.
Right.
Because every
You're
case
right.
of police brutality is not a case of police brutality.
Correct.
And that's the thing that people need
Correct.
to understand. And I'm not defending police
No,
brutality.
you're not.
So don't
No,
stop me in the grocery store talking about whatever. I'm saying that whatever you imagine, whatever you
ask you
think
where to
on the
find the butter?
outside. you know.
Let me
That's
just
all
break
I'm
it down for what Babs is actually saying is if you're
Are you mansplaining for me?
yes I am. If you're going in
Give
and
him a
out
little
of
more room to spread his
traffic,
legs.
if you're going in and out of traffic with a joint hanging out your mouth and a cop see you and you ran a red light and got pulled over, it's not
Police brutality.
It's not police brutality, all right? I'm with you,
But
right?
if he
It's not
but if he
profiling.
drags you out your car, beat your ass. All right.
All right.
We
There
see
we
that.
go.
We clearly see
We've
that.
solved it. Which is what always happens on Pundit Friday on WNHH-FM.
That's what we do. We
103.5,
solve problems.
live streamed at newhavenindependent.org. We got Babs Rolls Ivy, Markeisha Ricks, and Joe Ugly running down
Defining
the stories of the
mansplaining. Is
week.
that what you said?
Yes.
Mansplaining for Babs.
Thank you.
That's my job today.
Are you
I don't,
That's all
have
I
that, I don't
wanted.
have that on your list of names.
Please
gonna have
add
to
it.
work that in the next time.
The mansplainer.
Mansplaining.
Mansplaining.
That's right.
Y'all are stupid.
So Tony Harper's in the middle of Budget Tour 2018.
Yes.
She's getting ready for the next budget season to try to avoid having the freak out in the community when they just announced 11% tax increase and everyone to this day is still mad about it. She's trying to explain how the budget works.
She was on my program this morning explaining
How'd
it.
she do?
She did
Oh,
a great
was she?
job explaining
Yeah.
it. Yeah, she did. She broke it down, and I got a better understanding of
Yeah.
it.
So she's
And,
doing that at every management team meeting, the most grassroots way you can do it. She's going to every neighborhood.
Good for
and
her.
Markeisha has been watching her visit different places, different kinds of management teams. She went to Westville. She went to New Hallville. I think you saw her somewhere else. What are you seeing? Is this tour evolving, Markeisha?
It
Another
is.
leading question, and if so, how?
It is an evolving tour. I got to see it in Westville, and then I got to see it again in action in New Hallville. And
What changed?
what changes? She kind of changed up the presentation in the sense that this has been a 40-minute presentation in some places with like no real time to actually ask questions, and so people were like, "What?" But in New Hallville, she started out with like, let's just start with talking like what's good, like what's happened in the 5 years that our administration has been in office. What's good has happened in New Hallville, and they have a lot of like successes.
Sounds like a campaign speech.
Does sound like a campaign speech.
But I'm going to say,
Ooh.
I'll say, well,
That's not bad.
I
That's
asked her about it.
That's not bad.
Nothing
She's
wrong.
gonna be run. I mean,
I asked her about that on the program this morning. She said she's thinking about it,
Thinking about what?
about running.
For what?
Yeah.
Thinking
Okay.
about.
For governor? For president? For what? Mayor?
No,
she
she
missed
said
all
mayor.
I love
those.
candidates speak.
Yeah.
So one thing I've been wondering, I also read Tom Breen's article about the Worcester Square visit she had.
Yep.
I never see anyone talking about what I think is the elephant in the room.
Which is?
So we decided last year to do something that only communities that are heading toward bankruptcy
Borrowing
do
to cover
and get
our-
there. They borrow lots of money long term to cover operating expenses.
That has not
to
come
build
up.
something. So we went $160 million long term into debt to get a few years of a break of like $30 million a year to plug budget holes. I think that I don't understand why people aren't bringing that up, because that's the thing that could kill the city. That's
and that is
Hartford
what
in trouble.
Ken Joyner, in his own way, was bringing that up, because he's basically accusing them of overspending.
Based on your article, you're right.
Exactly, and overspending and not like actually budgeting for their true expenses, understanding that they're not going to get, like, they can go on forever. Because that's so. This is my other observation, is that these conversations with the community about the budget come across, at least to some of the people that I've talked to, as if the city is not taking responsibility for its own actions, instead of, oh, it's Yale's fault because they don't pay taxes. And then I saw that change where they had to admit that Yale is our, in spite of the fact that they don't pay taxes, they are still our largest employer, Yale and Yale
and
New Haven
biggest
Hospital,
taxpayer,
and our biggest taxpayer of the taxes that they pay. And they've upped their voluntary payments.
And if they didn't have those buildings, they wouldn't be producing taxes.
Exactly. So that changed it. Like, that changed from what I understood someone had seen in a previous presentation. Then, you keep hearing more and more about the state. Well, the state just doesn't give us what they're supposed to give us.
Which is true.
Which pisses the people off who represent the city from the state, because they're like, because that dust up with, I think it was Matt Emerson and Martin Looney, where they're like, New Haven is getting a bigger share than a lot of places, because we go up there and fight for what you do get. So don't bite the hand that feeds you.
But no, just because you're fighting don't mean that you. Just because you're fighting don't mean that you can't keep swinging. I mean, at the end of the day, when you look at the amenities... But don't swing at your
own team is what they're saying.
What's wrong with motivating the team? What's
they're
the
not
problem?
Motivating you, because they're like, we could figure out other ways to spend that money. Like, if it's like, we can make other deals, because let's be clear, we have our own budget problems.
So separate from that question about whether you press the state or not, I hear from other taxpayers saying, we agree with you. The state should give us more money. The state's not giving us more money. Keep pushing.
Why don't you?
But in the meantime, why don't we budget for...
not
getting the money, and then when we get more money, spend that.
Yep.
Understand, but that don't mean that we keep. You see, the minute we stop talking about it is the minute they stop doing it.
That is the tricky thing. So, like, if you're not pushing them,
exactly.
But if you do a budget based on money you're not going to have, then you're going to be in trouble.
That's American, ain't it?
That's Trumpian.
Yeah.
But then Trump declares bankruptcy.
That's not just Trumpian. That's not just Trumpian. That's been around for a minute. That's why we have such a deficit. But then it becomes, how do we offset this deficit? How do we fix this stuff? You don't take that off the table. Like, for example, I just found out, reading your article, that amenities for restaurants, goes to the state. The city don't get any of that.
And the
taxes.
city wants like a 1% surcharge, which
and
I've heard
listen,
Republicans approve.
That has been when I was an alderman, that was brought up. I mean,
And you see what happened when it went away? When no one's talking about it?
Right. It was restaurants.
Exactly.
And this was at the height of when all these restaurants started showing up, and we were like, we ought to really get a piece of that.
And they stopped talking about it, right?
Yes.
And what happened?
And 1%
went
sales
off the
tax,
table.
And people have
went
heard that.
right off the table. You got to keep talking about it. And you got to go after this thing. You got to keep pushing this stuff.
I would bet that there are more people that eat in this town.
Absolutely.
Not in this town.
From the suburbs
right?
all the time.
I'd rather plug our budget gaps that way rather than long-term spending that's going to cost bonding that's going to cost us more.
I feel like we should tap into all of that because that's only going to grow.
But I guess for me, it seems like a great place with this, because I understand what they're doing in the sense that, like, they really do need to get in front of this kind of speeding train narrative of people with pitchforks over the raised taxes. They're behind the curve on that. I think as they evolve the presentation, they have to get better at being able to say, like, talk more about the things that they are doing to get a hold on it. And they're missing the mark, I think, when it comes to capturing it, what it is people care about,
and in a short soundbite,
and not even just in a short. Even if you want to take a long time and explain it, be like, this. But if you can say, here's $40 million, and here's how we saved it, like, people are like, I'm sorry, what? And how does that work out to, like, you have to be able to say that,
right?
And so capturing that narrative of what people care about in terms of, like, we are changing the way we budget. Like, get more into those finer details. We are going to do what you said and not borrow any more money to cover our spending. We are going to, like, this is how we're realigning government, and that literally saves us this amount of money every year.
Well, it sounds like they need
there. You need to get down to those talking points, giving people a ginormous, people like us, because we're nerdy about that kind of stuff. We like to hear it.
Markeisha ought to be the communications director for the city of New Haven.
I'm telling you, girl. Here you go.
I
No,
like
we
to-
need-
Because she could
I'm
help-
like a
but-
ninja.
but
I
she
like
could
to
help-
move in
She could help
silence.
spin their message because God knows they need somebody to spin that
But
message.
you know, that's a Democratic problem. Here, look, that's a Democrat problem. Democrats have a problem. You know,
they do.
Republicans
They
are
don't give a
great-
damn what the message is.
Right.
And it's a lying message, and they will put it out there shiny and bright with the bow.
Republicans are great campaigners, terrible governors. They can't govern to save their life. Why? Because when it gets down to the nitty-gritty of how it works, they don't know. But since the Democrats know how it works, if you could just fine-tune your message.
Yeah.
I thought
And
Obama
be
was a
aware
great
of
campaigner.
who's in
Well,
the
that's what-
room. Like,
yeah,
be aware
but
of
one
who's
of
in the
how
room.
many?
Don't criticize the state when there's a state representative sitting in the room. Like, don't do that. I wouldn't
Depends.
do that. I'm not a
Because if
gangster.
I'm the state rep, I'm going to go back and be like, let me show you what I can do and
Well-
what I will do.
Well, let me tell you, you got an election coming.
yeah.
Yeah.
So let me remind you what you did when you went back.
I
there is-
just
It's
wouldn't
a
be
push
that
and
bold
pull.
to go into somebody's neighborhood and see a state rep sitting there and then slam the state about what they don't give up. I wouldn't do that.
Well, sometimes you have to.
There's one gripe
I wouldn't do that.
that City Hall.
You don't because you don't have to is what I'm saying.
There's one
Yeah, you
gripe
do.
that City
Sometimes you
Hall.
do.
In that context, the people in that room weren't mad at the state.
No,
they
they-
mad at the city.
They're mad at the city.
If you
but
blame the city and don't take responsibility for what you do,
Okay, so let,
people see that and they don't buy it.
I hear what,
I'm just telling you
okay,
what
but
I
you
know.
raised the point. Here's the point. Did they not take responsibility of what they did?
No.
Okay, so
Did
here's
I write
another-
that they took responsibility? Did I write that the Hart administration went in and said, we've been spending money in a way that is not wrong or illegal, but we can do better.
Okay, we could do
They
better.
didn't come out swinging like that.
Okay, they
that's
didn't.
how you get in front of something.
Right.
That's how you get on the offense instead of
agree.
the defense.
City
and
of New
I
Haven,
saw people
you need a
being
communications
defensive.
director.
No.
I
no.
saw people being defensive is what I saw.
I
I'm
don't
just
know.
telling you what I
could agree
observed.
with that.
Right.
I could agree with that. Being defensive is always a problem. You never get under defense. However, if you don't sit down,
I'm listening. Just because I'm drawing doesn't mean I'm listening. I'm like, who's the lady with the hat, Dorothy Height, who used to knit while she would listen to people?
Yeah.
Or
I'm
Nancy
taking
Ahern
in everything you're
Roberto.
saying.
What were you saying, Paul?
Nancy
oh, sorry.
Ahern.
Oh, yeah.
Used to knit too. Well, there's something that both sides agree on that they bitch about against state. I'm with them 1,000%. That we have a broken bus system. We've been telling.
Oh
the
my
state
God.
So we've been telling, but it came in the news this
It's so
week.
true, though.
It came in the news this week. So Dan
so
Malloy,
true.
for all his virtues, he just
I
deny
just-
it's true.
I'm so sick of
And
this
his
bus
DOT
conversation.
transportation was.
This
but
is a good one,
But it
though.
came up this week, Babs, in
came
a
up in
really
a really
important
good
way. So
way.
the state's been denying it for years. We've been pushing them to have our roots reflect where people actually go and when, rather than what they did in 1950s. So you can actually go to a job or school. And count on
actually
it.
make it
Yeah.
work for you.
So they always thought, oh, it's fine. But then after 10 years of studying it, they put a big report saying, hey, we rode your buses. They're a mess. We got to fix it. No sense how they're going to do it, right? So
Whole
now,
study about it.
out of the blue, this now endangers a big idea about how to change healthcare in New Haven. So Yale New Haven Hospital decided to join forces with our two great neighborhood clinics, Fairhaven and Cornell Scott Hill Health. They had an idea, which has plus and minuses in the public mind, of getting primary care all under one roof and having the neighborhood
And where would
centers
they
run
do
it
that?
on Long Wharf.
On Long Wharf.
Where
So
no
now-
buses
150
go.
Sergeant.
And they say, and, some buses
Where my
go,
surgeon
and I
is.
remember I was on Long Wharf where that was, where a lot of people work on Long Wharf.
They
and it was
do.
rush hour. And there were only every 45 minutes in rush hour. And you couldn't know whether the bus came or not because that app they spent millions trying to
Oh,
build
God.
doesn't work with an 18-year-old
not.
could have built. So I didn't know if a bus had just come or not.
Somebody a district could have built.
So, and then
fixed it, it
I'm
would've
able
worked.
bodied
Yeah.
and the weather
The
was
homies
good.
on the corner could've
Primary
built
care
it.
is for low-income people
Also, yes.
who need to see a doctor who might not get around so easy. So when it's raining, they're going to have to spend an hour or more, go out in the rain, walk blocks, try to catch buses,
Or
try
when
to get
it's
opponent.
snowing. Come on.
And that's all moving from neighborhood primary care centers where they could walk there. So they had a hearing about this week, and I think it's going to go through. And I think overall is a smart idea about how to make these clinics use their expertise and help them be viable in the future. They know how to swing with changing times to both, how healthcare changes and funding changes to try to stay alive. But the big concern at this hearing, 3.5 hours, Tom Breen has a great article
Great
on
article. It is such
was
a good
all
job.
about the buses. And Yale New Haven's response was, which I understand, we're working on that. But they say, this is going to go up in 10 months. We've been working on it 10 years, and the state hasn't done anything. I just wonder whether it's ever going to, whether the state's ever going to, because the State Department of Transportation has done a lot for train riders who go to
And they're
Fairfield
not
County.
happy.
And they've
No,
done a
they're
lot,
not.
They've
The
done
train
a lot
riders are
for
not happy.
white-collar bus riders at the state capitol with their busway they built. But they continue not to just let people get from point A to B with any ease in New Haven with the buses. And
Listen,
now I see how this affects bigger decisions.
This is what I feel. I feel you cannot talk about viable economic development and not talk about transportation on any level, on every level. And buses are the grassroots of all of that, right? Do you know how many
public
people
transportation, period.
public transportation could be such a bond for this city?
And
They have
particularly
cared
if you
a lot
want to
about-
talk about employment.
They've cared a lot about the
You need
wealthier
transportation.
commuters. We had many press conferences by the governor in his 8 years at Union Station. Not a single one about buses in New Haven.
Because,
And many
you
press
know, the
conferences
wa-
about the Q Bridge for suburban.
And but I have no
drivers.
problem with building parking lots every damn
They've
where
cut back
for
Shoreline East.
commuters and all this
Yeah.
other kind of stuff.
and roads.
So
but-
we're bitching. We agree on that one. What do you think,
Yes.
Joe Ugly?
No, I'm just thinking of a good infrastructure bill is definitely needed. You know, it's like, but that's on a national level. Good God! But
So I came away with two things, and I've told Paul this. I'll share it with you all. I came away with two things from the Longworth story. One, I was like, so are they really going to shunt poor people away from the nice hospitals downtown?
oh, absolutely.
To Longworth? Okay, one. Two, is this not a good time for Yale New Haven to do Yale New Haven Hospital to do the heavy lifting for the city and go to Yale University because they have that relationship
Use
and say,
the
hey,
shuttle.
y'all have a great shuttle system. Can we borrow that?
That would be a yes on the first thing and a no on
You know
the
what's
second
interesting about
thing.
that thing about the nice shutting down? Someone else gave me that theory too, which might be true, saying they want to use their existing facilities for upscale patients. But in truth,
Look at that Smilo Center. You damn right they want to use it
That's
for
my
upscale.
Center. It's nice. I've
Babs,
been in there.
Long Wharf is a more attractive location for wealthier patients, all of whom have cars. Because that's right
That's where
off the
parking is.
highway with easy free parking.
I
You got to
listen,
go downtown. It's a pain
you
in
and
the
I
butt
are
to park.
we are
No, I
thinking
think
in
they
the
think-
in the
but they're
right
marketers.
way.
But no, they're marketers. So I'm not saying you're wrong with that theory. You might be right, but I'm not sure because I don't know that it makes sense from a marketing point, from their point of view, to try to get a downtown how to park in older building for their wealthier customers, or the shiny, nice, right off the highway, big
I don't know,
parking lot
Paul.
on and off
And
Long
I
Wharf
I didn't
building.
say it had to make sense. I just said that's what I think they're gonna do. And they put a
No,
lot
but
of
it do
money.
make sense.
They
What
spent a
he's saying is
lot
the
of
look.
money in that little area over there. And
Also, not for nothing, since I've been in that hospital a couple times this year, they valet your parking. So,
And
the
the-
only hardship is getting to the parking.
Yeah.
Other than that, you don't even have to pay for it.
yeah. So and listen, they spent a lot of money maneuvering that community, that neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
They spent a lot of money. That's a lot more money than they would have to spend on the Long Wharf. Waterview be damned. Listen, if they could put up some structures to keep all little poor people going to wherever and keep them out of their little.
Absolutely.
I think
No,
that
you're
way.
right.
I'm thinking that way.
And it's not a bad idea.
Because
It's
listen,
not a, you're not.
Look at
you're not
housing.
thinking out of time. You're-
Housing,
exactly.
public housing has
It's-
been in places that were not considered attractive.
Right.
Then
Except
you,
across the
then
park,
you-
train station.
and then you fast forward 40, 50 years, and now these places are attractive.
Attractive. Yep.
Right?
And now they want to push them out.
Push them out. Oh,
Push
you
'em in
have to go
different lists.
somewhere else
Yeah.
now. You have to go.
It's like, oh, it's so nice and quiet out here at the edges of town.
Yeah.
yes.
Burn grant, $1 million to New Hallville. We're halfway through spending it to make it safer. How's it going, Markeisha?
Looks like it's going swimmingly. They got I can't think of the acronym, like what the words stand for. Can you help me? Like I wrote it down. Like when I write it down, I remember it. But it's called LISC, which is the kind of an
Low
organization
Income
that's.
Support Corporation, I think. No?
No, I don't think that's right.
Anyway, it's a national group. Roland Young was part of it.
Local
Initiative Support Corporation.
Yes.
And it's
I
a
just wrote it.
nonprofit that quasi, that gets a lot
Oh
of
God,
government
this
money to
town
help.
is
And they-
non-profit heavy,
Oh,
man.
yeah.
It's not a local
It's
group.
not a local
It's a
group.
national group. Did a
But they
study.
kind of keep an eye and provide technical service to the people who are operating the burn grant. And so they gave New Haven thumbs up for, like, even though there's been like what we've been allowed to cover, it seems, is the infighting over the grant. But they've actually used the grant to kind of drill down, and things are up and good things are up in New Hallville. Crime is down. Gun violence is down in New Hallville. The range is quiet. Like, there are good things happening in New Hallville. And I remember when I first moved here 4 years ago, people were like, be careful. I was like, wait, what? And I'm always very conscious to not
I love
malign
that.
people's communities.
And I might have been one of them people.
But I'm very careful not to malign people's communities because
Right.
what I'm cognizant of is that there are people who
Who
live
live
there
there
and who
and
live
go-
there forever and
Right.
that y'all, the only way I'm leaving here is on a stretcher.
Right.
And I don't plan on it being from a straight bullet. I mean, I died of a good old age. And so, like, good things are happening. Like, they did a spinoff of the USAT program to have a New Hall specific USAT for young people, like young school age
Yep.
kids and older kids.
Yep.
Out of the 17 older people that they're helping who are like 17 to 26, they only had 2 reoffend, which is pretty good.
Okay.
So like they have a lot going for themselves, and so like they got the thumbs up. They're like, keep doing what you're doing, like, hold each other accountable, make sure the money continues to be spent in the community by groups with a connection to the community, because those folks will do that work.
Yep.
Right.
So
And that's what makes
shouts out to the burger.
that what
Make
makes a good
community.
city good. Makes the community
Absolutely.
good.
And that's the
Mhm.
word on the
Yep.
week just ended in New Haven, Connecticut, as seen by the pundits who do not predict. Pundit Friday.
That's why we're
WNHH.
good pundits.
Listen,
Thank you
always
so
bet on
much.
black women. Let me tell
Thank you so much for joining us today on Pundit Friday.
Black women, I'm with you, huh?
It's always a height of my week dealing with the best pundits in the media universe, including this week, Babs
No,
Rolls
what's my new
Ivy,
title?
Joe Ugly,
What's my new title?
Mansplainer.
Mansplainer,
Mansplainer.
Okay.
and the star of all the stars in our constellation, Markeisha Ricks.
We missed you,
Norma.
Norma.
No.
Thank you.
Harry did join us too. Harry must be like, I'm tired of that.
We're going to take it out with the Afro-Semitic Experience performing I Wish I Knew How It'd Feel to Be Free from the group CD, A Plea for Peace. We know what it's like to be free. We just got to remember to book our flight. Book your flight all weekend long here on WNHH, New Haven's home for community radio.